In 2015, the city of Chiclayo finished construction on the Paseo Yortuque, which commemorates the region's Moche culture. The Moche culture flourished along the coast of the northwestern Peru for 600 years until around 700 AD, and this walking path of statues immortalizes many of their leaders, folk figures, and deities. For over a full mile, visitors to the Paseo Yortuque can enjoy murals and more than 60 oversized statues sculpted by artist Frede Luque. Many depict former royalty, but others are bizarre, lifelike depictions of creatures drawn from the Moche pantheon. There are human crab hybrids, long-necked monsters, and rinchin, a demonic fish once known for attacking careless fishermen unless the Moche priesthood supplicated it with offerings. However, one statue has drawn more attention than any other since Paseo Yortuque's creation, a sculpture of a terrifying lizard man staring down at pedestrians. A sign accompanying this human-reptile hybrid names him Morup and reads, "Iguanas were considered to be beings with special characteristics. Due to their ability to live underground, they were considered the contact between the world of the living and of the dead, or ancestors. The iguana man of Mochi Ka iconography is the helper of another powerful character. His presence and activities related to the tomb, carrying offerings to help the deceased descend. It gave him a special place as a sort of mediator between the world of the living and of the dead. Another dragon-like humanoid figure stands along the Paseo Yortuque as well, but Morup has gained the most attention online. In fact, within months, paranormal forums on the internet were abuzz discussing the imposing reptilian figure. Was it, as the Paseo Yortuque signage claimed, a deity of the Moche once revered as an intercessor between the living or the dead, or was artist Frede Luque trying to tell us something about a modern-day lizard person, a secret in hiding in plain sight? Was there any occult significance? This fervor was fueled by the fact that a cursory search online reveals very little academic literature, at least in English, about any iguana deity named Morup. In actuality, the name Morup appears to be a corruption of the Moche word Marup, one of their names for iguana. The name Morup was first applied to the Moche's nameless iguana god by the ethnographer and historian Jürgen Golte, who had taught American studies both in his native Germany and in Lima, Peru, during the final few years of his life. Golte used the name Morup in his 1993 book Los Dioses de Sipan, which presents Moche legends in a form suitable for schoolchildren. Golte describes Morup as the constant companion of the wrinkle-faced, snake-belt god Kismike, who arrived in ancient times to defend humankind during the Age of Monsters. In Moche artistic depictions, Morup is seen with his arms raised, Kismike wearing a condor headdress and carrying accessories normally reserved for shamans. The signage of the Morup statue appears correct in its assumption that the god has something to do with the dead. He is often seen with symbols associated with psychopomps, deities tasked with escorting the dead to the afterlife. Think of Anubis, or the Grim Reaper, or angels. Among these symbols are Morup's human-animal hybrid appearance, a motif commonly found in shamans who escort the dead, and his trusty canine companion. Dogs were universally regarded as guides to the afterlife, so it seems we've figured out the statue's identity. But does it signal something else? Were the Moche's depiction of Morup trying to tell us a physical reality rather than a purely spiritual reality? Do reptilian humanoids dwell among us, and if so, where do they come from? It's worth noting that the city of Chiclayo, where the Paseo Yortuque and the Morup statue were erected, has something of a mysterious air about it, as does the entire territory of the ancient Moche. Because they lacked a written language, what we know about the Moche can only be gathered from the relics and ruins they left behind. By all appearances, they were quite sophisticated, pioneering metallurgy like soldering and gilding, They fashioned an impressive system of aqueducts and built large pyramids from countless mud bricks. While there are plenty of smaller ruins in the vicinity of Chiclayo, one of the Moche's most important centers lies around 86 miles down the coast to the southeast and is named El Brujo, the Sorcerer. This puts Chiclayo squarely in the center of what could be considered a window area. Although similar concepts stretch back much earlier, the idea of the window area was first formally put forth in John Keel's 1970 book Operation Trojan Horse. After poring over countless reports, Keel noticed what he claimed to be a tendency for anomalies and UFO sightings to appear within a 200-mile diameter of ancient archaeological sites. While most of the locations Keel identified happened to be in the United States, with each state supporting 2 to 10 window areas, researchers in the years since have found that zones of heavy paranormal activity around the globe meet the exact same criteria. Now, accordingly, the Peruvian coast has remained a hotbed for UFO sightings over decades. In fact, in 1999, unexplained aerial phenomena were reported in the skies above Cuzco, Tumbes, Huánuco, Pucallpa, Lima, and as luck would have it, Chiclayo. Famed UFO hoaxer Billy Meyer even claimed that UFO bases could be found under Chiclayo. UFO sightings in Chiclayo may not be as common as elsewhere in the world, but still happen with some frequency, often in dramatic ways. In April of 1950, a private airplane departing Chiclayo's Corpac Airport was followed for a brief time by a single glowing disc. It eventually disappeared into the clouds. On February 2nd, 1967, a 4-engine DC-4, piloted by Oswald Sanviti, transported 52 passengers and 6 other crew members from the northern town of Piura to Lima, Peru's capital city. Sanviti, who had more than 22,000 hours of flight under his belt, was about half an hour into the flight when he saw something that startled him. They were right. Above Chiclayo, they were at an altitude of 7,000 feet when he noticed a luminous object to the right of the plane. It was beginning to get dark, and the object, which emitted a very strong light, was shaped like a reversed cone. It was more or less at 8 miles from the plane, flying at the same speed, same altitude, and keeping the same direction. In other words, it was flying in line with the plane as if it wanted to observe it more closely. As he was observing this, he saw it making a number of movements, all of which were done at a fantastic speed. It would dart vertically in the air and several times then return to its original place. He had alerted his crew and told the passengers to watch the UFO. Sanviti had informed them that in his opinion, they were being observed. He took to the intercom at about 6:30 p.m. local time and announced to the crew, "Call to all, look by the portholes on our right. There's a strange object there, and it observes us. It is a UFO." A majority of the crew and passengers, including a army personnel and the Peruvian army, a college professor, and a newspaper editor, flocked to see if the pilot's claim was true. All of them saw it, an unidentified flying object dancing around the aircraft, releasing flashes of white that changes to red, blue, and orange whenever it ascended. It literally bounced around the plane for nearly a full hour, keeping pace and appearing on all sides. Whenever it drew near, the witnesses could see that its base resembled a funnel. Sanviti announced its position to the passengers as best as he was able. The newspaper editor on board, Elmer Nunez, recalled that many passengers were terrified and that some women were at the edge of hysteria. A woman, suddenly in burst of sobs, but one of the passengers spoke to her and made her calm down again. It's the children who were delighted by the incident. It was for them only a great subject of recreation, but as for myself, I was very nervous and very frightened. Nobody on board had a camera. Usually, I always had one with me, but this time I had forgotten it, and I was very disappointed. Sanviti later reported that during the entire sighting, his radio was malfunctioning and that all lights on the plane had dimmed significantly. Eventually, the object was lost to sight as it bolted off into the distance at a rapid speed. The radio began functioning normally again, and the lights brightened. Sanviti contacted the nearest control tower, relaying what everybody else had seen. That was when the object returned, now with an identical second craft close behind. Sanviti managed to convey this development just as the objects flew over the plane. He would later express the belief that they had intercepted his radio transmissions and knew they had been spotted. The remainder of the flight played out calmly. All of the passengers were interviewed after they disembarked, expressing awe and terror in equal measure, but all consistent in their description of the craft. Many who had once dismissed the possibility of UFOs, including the college professor, had their minds changed by the apparition over Chiclayo. Despite Nunez's declaration that no one had a camera, a few witnesses later had stepped forward to share their photographs. Some of you might be asking, what does all of this have to do with the Morup statue? Directly nothing, but it does speak to how unexplained phenomena are no stranger to Chiclayo. There is also the close association between reptilian races and the UFO phenomenon. Many believe that several factions of extraterrestrials, often at war with one another, are visiting Earth. The reptilians are generally regarded as the worst of the bunch, openly hostile towards witnesses, harming them in every way imaginable, including sexually. According to many, they have set up secret underground bases on Earth for their own nefarious purpose. Some feel that the Morup statue signals the reptilians' presence on our planet, or at the very least in our distant past. Others allege not one, but 3 separate races of reptilians exist. The primary variety, the Draco, a sometimes winged race of bipedal, lizard-like aliens hailing from the Alpha Draconia star system. Reptilians crossed with gray aliens, and reptoids, a variety of reptilian-human hybrid. The same year that Oswaldo Sanviti and his passengers experienced their harrowing UFO encounter over Chiclayo, David Seawalt encountered a UFO the size of a house in Calgary, Alberta. It emitted a high-pitched sound before firing a beam of light in his direction, instilling a trance state in David. He was levitated into the craft, and inside, 2 monstrous aliens with skin like a crocodile's stripped him naked, examined his body, and injected him with some sort of substance. He was then beamed back to Earth, where he forgot the entire ordeal until he had remembered it in a dream. Yet, another famous alien abductee who claims to have met these reptilians was a name of Pamela Stonebrook, a jazz singer who claimed that she had a romantic physical relationship with one of their number. She went on record saying that she not only respected him, but felt that thousands of years ago, she had lived a past life as a reptilian here on Earth before their race was obliterated by some vague apocalyptic event. Much of our modern reptilian mythology was established by John Rhodes, who claimed that the Alpha Draconians roam in the stars in their motherships in a state of suspended animation, looking for viable new worlds to colonize. When a suitable candidate is located, they dispatch a scout crew to land and tunnel underground. This is where they establish their foothold by hybridizing with the native intelligent species. Others, however, claim that the reptilians originate on Earth. In fact, in 1961, an Oregonian woman who went by the name or pseudonym Joy Delight claimed to have seen 3 reptilians in her kitchen while her husband was away on duty with the U.S. Air Force. Joy said that the creatures stood over 6 feet tall, sporting yellow eyes, and were covered with scaly skin and a row of spines down their backs. Now, over the coming months, the reptilians would appear, never interacting with her until 35 years later, when they would finally announce that they meant no harm. One day, in 1998, Joy sat down to rest, only to suddenly find herself transported to the reptilians' underground kingdom. Here, she met their ruler, who proclaimed that their noble race were actually descendants of the dinosaurs. In contrast to the spacefaring variety of reptilians, his people were supposedly peaceful. Their leader merely wished for his subjects to return to life on the surface. Joy was unable to pronounce their leader's name, so instead she chose the unassuming name King Leo. Joy would continue to meet with the King Leo's people until at least 1999, when he announced that most of his race would remain underground, with only a few surfacing to live alongside humankind. But was this truly the first time they had emerged? For all we know, these dinosaur descendants made themselves known long before 1999. Perhaps to the Moche, who found in their subterranean home an inspiration for the psychopomp iguana man Morop. There is also the issue of the Moche god Morop's status as a psychopomp, one of the figures who led the Moche dead to the underworld. This subterranean association naturally calls to mind tales of extraterrestrial bases beneath the earth. Is it coincidental that reptilians are among the most common races said to inhabit these species? The theme of underground reptilian bases is inextricably tied to the controversial conspiracy theorist David Icke, who was greatly influenced by John Rhodes. In his 1999 book, The Biggest Secret, released the same year that King Leo declared his people were emerging, Icke claimed that beneath its surface, the entire globe was crisscrossed with tunnels and bases forged by the reptilian forces. Icke claims some of the most important sites can be found in the American Southwest. This is where reptilians conduct hybridization experiments with human beings right beneath our very feet. Supposedly, the Denver airport in Colorado sits atop one such base, the Boynton Canyon in Sedona, Arizona. Icke asserts that these reptilians can shapeshift and have infiltrated the highest echelons of authority. Among their ranks, he counts government officials like presidents, prime ministers, and the monarchy. In fact, in recent years, Icke's views have been tied to the extremist political fringe. However, the theme of alien bases underground was popular long before David Icke's ascendancy. Famous stories like New Mexico's Dulce Base inspired speculation that UFO occupants used underground facilities as places to experiment on alien abductees, or even as meeting places to cooperate with terrestrial governments. Viewed another way, these stories are a continuation of older folklore that often placed all manner of monsters, including reptilian dragons in caves and caverns. Notably, little people, fairies, elves, dwarves are found worldwide and almost always live in subterranean spaces. Their folklore bears a close resemblance to modern stories of alien abduction. One urban legend from Los Angeles even alleges that a race of lizard people migrated north from Central America 5 millennia ago, establishing a high elaborate city underneath where the modern metropolis now stands. The LA lizard people supposedly fled a cataclysm in their native land, but were able to use their own technological prowess to dig the network of 285 tunnels and massive chambers to accommodate over 1,000 families. One man, a geophysicist named George Warren Schulfett, so strongly believed in the LA lizard people that he had spent his entire life searching for their mythical kingdom in the 1930s. Schulfett later claimed to have knowledge of the lizard people's catacombs, having charted nearly 12,000 square feet of tunnels, chambers, and gold vaults using his patented radio X-ray machine. Suffice to say, many actually regarded Schulfett as a crank, but the rumors continue today that a race of humanoid reptiles once dwelled under Los Angeles. As elsewhere, Peru sees regular claims that secret extraterrestrial base shelters beneath the countryside. A flying saucer wave, or flop, as ufologists call them, took place during the summer of 1968 over the Andes, spurred by sightings of UFOs plummeting to the Earth but never crashing. Rumors began circulating that an area close to Lake Yanacocha housed an alien base. The stories persisted so strongly for so long that the authorities dispatched a commission and armed law enforcement to investigate, although they could not find anything. Similar accusations claim that the Cordillera Blanca, a stretch of the Andes Mountains, houses multiple UFO bases right beneath its very highest peaks. Harold T. Wilkins, who had authored Mysteries of Ancient South America, had concluded that 2 underground tunnels connect the area around Lima to Cusco and Salar de Atacama, a large salt desert in Chile. The Cusco Tunnel stretches 400 miles east, while the Chilean Tunnel spans a staggering 900 miles south. Could these be the ancient pathways of an extinct or still surviving reptilian race, immortalized in the statue of Morop? Might similar tunnels connect Chiclayo to other far-flung locals? And if so, could they be responsible for the area's UFO activity? even if we take Morup's identity at face value, that he literally escorts the dead as a psychopomp, we can find further resonances in ufology. Psychopomps were often trickster figures, dwelling at the threshold between realms and taking people into the other world. In this sense, they were liminal, existing between realms. Many scholars who perceive an occult origin for UFOs have drawn connections between trickster phenomena and UFOs, which often unleash playful synchronicities and sometimes harmful pranks on alien abductees both during and after their encounters. Though Morup has never been designed or designated as a trickster per se, his status as a psychopomp suggests that he may have engaged in the same prankish behavior that so many UFO and paranormal witnesses report. Dozens of further connections can be drawn between UFOs and the dead, though they are rarely discussed by mainstream researchers. For example, unexplained aerial phenomena were once seen as harbingers of death and doom. Poltergeist activity often manifests after alien abductions. Most alarmingly, dead loved ones appear during UFO contact with startling regularity. In fact, Anne Strieber herself, late wife to the world's most famous alien abductee, Whitley Strieber, noticed this connection. After receiving thousands of letters from fellow experiencers who had read her husband's 1987 bestseller Communion, she made an alarming observation: that the UFO contact experience has something to do with what we call death. So does, it seems, Morup. Today, the Strieber's correspondence is housed in Fondren Library's archives of the impossible at Rice University in Houston, Texas. Many of the accounts archived there feature dead loved ones, either appearing aboard UFOs or seen by alien abductees during heavy periods of heavy UFO contact. So far, we've entertained the idea that Morup and other reptilians may be physical beings, perhaps extraterrestrials or even the evolved descendants of the dinosaurs. But what if the original interpretation of Morup as a god was true? And what if he still asserts his influence to this very day? Recall the name given to the Moche culture, specifically the center, the El Brujo, the sorcerer. Like all indigenous people, the Moche believed in a robust spirit world thriving alongside our very own. The shamanic practices of Peru and South America, more broadly, are among the most vibrant found anywhere in the world, and many of them persist to the present day. Magical practitioners in the vicinity of Chiclayo can draw a direct line of tradition all the way back to the Moche themselves. El Brujo was given its name because, above all else, it is understood as a ritual site, where shamans practice their art to commune with the other world. Some believe the powers conjured there yet remain, drifting on the wind throughout northern Peru. In fact, the El Brujo site features a yoga and meditation area available for visitors to use today. Tying in with our reptilian theme, another important site just to the north of El Brujo is a place called Huaca del Dragon, which includes a carving of a massive reptilian monster on its walls. Closer still is Chiclayo. Practically on its doorstep are the Cerro Patapo ruins, associated with the more recent Wari culture. Remains found on site suggest this ruined pre-Columbian city also saw its share of ritual practice, including human sacrifice. But more accurately, it is shamanism and magical practice, has its fingerprints all over Chiclayo to this day. The most visible indicator of these beliefs can be found at the Mercado Modelo, where a thriving witches' market, or a Mercado de las Brujas, meets the needs of contemporary magicians. Here, locals and the occasional tourist can purchase everything from pre-boxed love spells and magical herbs to skulls and talismans, and other fetishes. It is even possible to hire your own shaman. Although, since scams do run rampant, buyer beware. Admittedly, this in and of itself isn't all that remarkable. Many cities in Central and South America devote portions of their marketplace to the sale of folk remedies, spiritual accessories, and other magical ephemera. Two things render Chiclayo's Mercado de las Brujas noteworthy. One, it is a prominent feature of the city, often mentioned in travel literature, and is regarded as having one of the best selections of traditional medicine South America has to offer. 2, it is less than a mile and a half from Paseo Yortuque, where statues of the old gods, including Morup, proudly stand on display. This proximity alone is fascinating. Does Paseo Yortuque simply commemorate the Moche, or does it serve as an easily accessible way for devotees to pay homage to their gods and goddesses? Perhaps it is both. Peru's affinity for the occult did not go unnoticed by outsiders, including Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, a Russian mystic and founder of the Theosophy. This esoteric movement arose in the late 19th century, blending with similar traditions like spiritualism and shamanism, and remains practiced to this very day. Theosophy primarily focuses on teachings from a brotherhood of disembodied ascended masters who visit humanity on a semi-regular basis to impart spiritual knowledge. In the aftermath of World War I, people all around the world turned to both Theosophy and spiritualism in the hope of contacting their dead loved ones through seances. Theosophy's influence on our modern paranormal thinking cannot be overstated. Many practices found in seances, as well as modern concepts of fairies as nature elementals, are at least partially rooted in the discipline. Some of the earliest UFO contactees of the 20th century were in fact practicing theosophists, communicating with extraterrestrials from distant planets through vectors normally reserved for spirits, like channeling and automatic writing. H.P. Blavatsky visited Peru twice. The first time was in 1884. She was quite taken with the Andes Mountains, claiming they were home to powers closely related to Theosophy's ascended masters, who themselves hailed from the Himalayan region of Tibet. The first Theosophical Lodge in Peru was founded on June 1, 1924 in Lima. From 1926 to 1929, similar sites had sprung up across the nation until the revocation of their charter in 1934. Theosophy briefly took hold in Peru again, thanks to Juan F. Aguilar, who chose 2 towns for his new branches, Mollendo and, of course, Chiclayo. Theosophic lodges could be found in a lot of cities worldwide, so this alone, while interesting, is far from proof that Chiclayo is a mystical place. However, H.P. Blavatsky's intense fascination with the Andes is interesting when one considers that she herself may have been the first modern author to actually write about reptilians. In her 1888 work, The Secret Doctrine, Blavatsky claimed that the mythical island of Lemuria once sat in the Indian Ocean. The island was ruled by a race of proud dragon men. These reptilian beings enjoyed great success until they brought about their own doom in a cataclysm caused by dabbling in dark magic. It is interesting how their untimely end loosely conforms not only with the Pamela Stonebrook's past life as a supposed reptilian, but also the urban legend of the LA lizard people. Wherever they come from, reptilians like Morup seem to have been interacting with humans since time immemorial. Some of our oldest myths and legends, even the foundation of our religions, claim that snake and lizard-like beings have visited us from other realms. The Hindu religion speaks of Nagas, half-human, half-cobra beings who are semi-divine and can appear either entirely human or entirely reptilian as they wish. Meetings with them were often beneficial but held an equal potential for danger. According to Islam, jinn, a race between humans and angels resembling European fairies, sometimes take on a reptilian appearance. Reptilian motifs in Greek mythology can be found in the snake hair of Gorgons, like Medusa, the half-snake Lamia, and the father of all monsters, Typhon. Perhaps most famously, Abrahamic religions describe the serpent who tempted Eve in the garden, a pivotal moment in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. But by eating the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, Adam and Eve gained great insight, but also introduced sin into the world. In most interpretations, the serpent in the Garden of Eden is either Satan or acting under his direction. Another interpretation nests the Garden of Eden story of the civilizing trickster. The concept is unfathomably old, appearing in indigenous cultures at time depths predating recorded history. The most famous variant in this body of myths is perhaps Prometheus, who in Greek myth stole fire from the gods and gifted it to human beings. A similar myth from Polynesia sees Maui stealing fire from the people of the underworld to give to humans. Like the knowledge Adam and Eve gained at the urging of the serpent, human beings in these stories are given tools of immeasurable power, tools which, while beneficial, were destined to lead to untold strife. In many civilizing trickster myths, humankind is punished for their transgressions. Time and again, throughout history, we find powers from the sky bringing human tools for technological advancement. In a sense, it is the same story played out in the infamous 1947 Roswell UFO crash, where extraterrestrials, even if by accident, gifted us the technological basis for many of our modern conveniences. Some claim that the successful development of transistors was actually the direct result of insights gleaned from the Roswell UFO crash. Indeed, it was the same year, in December, that transistors made the leap from theory to reality, all at the hands of American researchers. Turning to Latin America, these civilizing gods sometimes take the form of reptilians, as in the Garden of Eden story. The most famous is Quetzalcoatl, the winged serpent. In certain myths from Aztec culture, Quetzalcoatl not only created humans, but gave them the gift of maize. The large-scale propagation of this crop played a pivotal role in the expansion of the massive Aztec Empire. To bring things full circle, we even find allusions to the Moche iguana god, Morup, playing this exact same role. Some sources indicate that he not only escorted the dead, but also provided the Moche with the knowledge and assistance to improve their society. In addition to being civilizing tricksters, another theme runs through the ancient conceptions of reptilians, the theme of royalty. Serpents were closely associated with Egyptian pharaohs. In Asia, Chinese mythology speaks of dragon kings and aerial phenomena like comets, conflated with dragons, often heralded regime change. Throughout Eurasia, dragons were regarded as a symbol of royalty. Kings and queens derived their authority from dragons, but both in reality and in myth. King Arthur's father was famously Uther Pendragon, his royal coat of arms displaying a pair of golden dragons. These themes are still prominent in today. In Game of Thrones, the rightful monarchs of Westeros are masters of dragons, and we use the term draconian to describe excessively severe or harsh punishment at the hand of rulers. Even David Icke's theory that authority figures are secretly lizard people in disguise speaks to this close, ancient link between reptiles and people in power. Ayahuasca is a psychoactive brew used by numerous tribes all throughout the Amazon basin. All of them regard it first and foremost as a medicine, a purging mechanism by which negative energy is dispelled through vomiting and diarrhea. Drinkers often emerge with enhanced compassion, serenity, and an increased sense of duty to the world and others. Along with this literal cleansing come all manner of visions, from kaleidoscope renditions of the jungle ecosystem to encounters with the mother ayahuasca herself, a serpentine deity who is at once the drink, the wine from which it is made, and a goddess. Despite how Western culture treats visions obtained under the use of psychedelics as pure fantasy, ayahuasca has an astounding track recording for imparting verifiable, unobtainable information and insight to those who drink it. There are numerous examples from drinkers, both indigenous people and anthropologists, who learn of the death of family members first during their ayahuasca session. In one famous example, anthropologist Kenneth Kensinger first learned about his grandfather's death while in Peru from tribespeople who had drunk ayahuasca. It wasn't confirmed by the outside world until 2 days later, when he was radioed with the news. Between 1960 and 1961, anthropologist Michael Harner was conducting research in the Peruvian Amazon, far from the future home of the Morup statue in Chiclayo, but still within the borders of the country. After living a while among the Conibo tribe, he was told that if he wished to truly understand their supernatural cosmology, he should partake in an ayahuasca ceremony. He reluctantly agreed, fully aware of how unpleasant it could get. He forced down the medicine on top of everything else. It is known for its unpleasant taste, and soon experienced a series of visions resembling caverns, giant crocodile heads, dancing demons, gaping jaws, and white water rapids. He was certain he was going to die. Then, From the darkness in the back of his mind, he received a message. Harner said, I could only very dimly perceive the givers of these thoughts. Giant reptilian creatures reposing sluggishly at the lowermost depths of the back of my brain, where it met the top of the spinal column. I could only vaguely see them in what they seemed to be gloomy, dark depths. Then, they projected a visual scene in front of me. First, they showed me the planet Earth as it was eons ago, before there was any life in it. I saw an ocean, barren land, and a bright blue sky. Then, black specks dropped from the sky by the hundreds and landed in front of me on the barren landscape. I could see that the specks were actually large, shiny black creatures with stubby pterodactyl-like wings and huge whale-like bodies. Their heads were not visible to me. They flopped down, utterly exhausted from their trip, resting for aeons. They explained to me in a kind of thought language that they were fleeing from something in space. They had come to the planet Earth to escape their enemy. The creatures then showed me how they had created life on the planet in order to hide with the multitudinous forms and thus disguise their presence. Before me, the magnificence of plant and animal creation and speciation, hundreds of millions of years of activity, took place on a scale and with a vividness impossible to describe. I learned that the dragon-like creations were thus inside of all forms of life, including man. They were the true masters of humanity and the entire planet, they told me. We humans were but the receptacles and servants of these creatures. For this reason, they could speak to me from within like myself. Like other reptilians all throughout mythology, these dragons were rulers of humankind. Harner was profoundly disturbed by this vision. Being an atheist, he was unaware of their similarities to the satanic dragon from the Bible's Book of Revelation, until two missionaries shared the story with him. Harner's anxiety intensified until he sought advice from an old blind shaman in the tribe. He described his vision, to which the old shaman grinned and waved his hand dismissively. Oh, they're always saying that, he had chuckled. But they are only the masters of outer darkness. Despite Harner's belief that his vision was unique, as it would be, if it was merely an hallucination, other members of the tribe had encountered the exact same enormous reptilians themselves. They were real. What is the source of this terrifying intelligence? Are these ancient reptilian masters relegated to Peru, or do they lurk everywhere, at all times, inches from our face, but unseen in waking life? We may never know. But that doesn't mean we never did. Perhaps the Moche knew. Perhaps they actually met a terrifying iguana god who escorted them to the threshold of the underworld and brought them back building blocks of civilization. While forgotten to the rest of us, the specter of Murup lingers on, encountered only by those who slip beyond the fringes of reality, or those who walk past his statue in Chiclayo's Paseo Yortuque, blissfully unaware of the dark symbolism it contains. If you guys enjoyed today's episode, be sure to go ahead and leave a comment down below to let me know what you think and what your thoughts are on reptilians. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to go ahead and hit that big ol' red subscribe button and keep your notifications on for content just like this. As always, guys, I love you all, keep an open mind, and I'll check you guys out in the very next video.